on and welcome, friends, to the 11th. Oh my God. Right, Sean? It's the 11th?
Yep, 11th.
Yeah, the 11th episode of the Lord of the Rungs podcast, the only Tolkien podcast that the professor himself would dismiss as juvenile and crass. I'm Dan Zerby, here with Sean Kelly, my good friend and co-host, and together we'll be discussing the writings, adaptations, news, games, and anything else involving J.R.R. Tolkien's Legendarium. And we'll be doing so in a way that he probably wouldn't love. It's, you know, like I said, juvenile and crass.
Yes, so we'll touch on that in a sec.
Oh, yeah. So today we are doing the part 3 of our Rings of Chowder. Every time it makes me laugh. Every time I just love that name.
It's the soup, baby, but a little bit creamier and a little bit chunkier.
Yeah, you gotta have the taters in there. Yeah,
I guess so.
Yeah, so we originally were all gonna have a 2-part episode on this, and then while recording yesterday, the previous episode, I should say,
we were running pretty long already.
Yeah, before we knew it, we were at an hour, and we were like, we haven't even covered half of the second half of this season, so we better make this into another episode.
Yeah, if there's anything to indicate that the pacing ramps up in that show, it's that we had about twice as many notes in the second half.
I mean, we were both marking off the notes that we had already discussed when we recorded the previous episode, and almost everything that I have written down is still there, not crossed out.
Yeah.
There's plenty to talk about.
But first, before we get into that, two things before I mostly me don my correction cap. I did want to say, because I keep forgetting to mention it, but I just want to thank you, Zerby, for doing the lovely intro and outro music for the episodes. You put in work for that, and it sounds great.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I did. It was a lot of work, mostly because I'm not very experienced with recording, and also limited talent as a musician. So it took a long time, but I appreciate it. I'm very proud of what I came up with. So thank you.
Well, the humbleness is recognized, but you did a good job.
Thank you. Now I do appreciate it.
Onto a darker sort of topic, I guess. We're hopping into correction corner, skipping and capering, and now it transitions into
meandering.
a slow shuffle. Yes, of shame. Last
Dragon
episode, I did mention. I won't go into details, but I did make some
It doesn't need to be
claims
repeated
about the size of the late great professor's phallus, and I just want to say, first of all, I don't know what
he could have been as impressive as he could have been as impressive as you claimed. It's possible.
I would guess it's more of like a Class C English 14 centimeters, something like that. But this is all just wild speculation and wild indeed. So I just want to oh wait, yeah, you know what? With that, I just heard another letter slip through the letter slit in my front door. It's another cease and desist. I'll add that to the pile.
Yeah, if anybody from the Tolkien estate ever hears this, then we will not be endeared to them. Yes,
we certainly won't be going to any moots as special guests.
Not at least not with an invitation.
No, we're moot crashers. That's right. I think our vibe anyway.
Yeah, we're the punk rock Tolkien podcast, and we don't need an invitation. We're just gonna show up. Watch out with our leather jackets. And our
slicked back hair, and we just bring swords.
Oh God,
Moot crashers would be the like the most unwatchably nerdy version of Wedding Crashers. I think.
God, it would be awful. There'd be no sex. First of all, that's number one.
Wait, you don't crash it to hook up. You're crashing it to correct people on their grammar or something. It's just like
it's like, well, actually, there's a lot of that, I'm sure.
Yes. Oh, well, actually is right and left, and yeah, it would just be unwatchable. So
yeah. And I know it would be horrible because I am somebody who says, well, actually, more than I'd like to admit.
Yes, I've tried to move away from that.
Yeah, I'm working on it. It's all a process. Anyway, we should start in on this episode.
Yeah, we got a lot of
lot of work to do.
We got a lot of meat to get through. So give it to me and give it to me raw, Zerb.
Okay. All right, so in our previous episode, we talked mostly about the Harfoots, a bit about the dwarves. So today we're going to be focusing on the Southlanders, Númenóreans, and the elves / Sauron / orcs, and they're all pretty connected. But let's start talking about the Southlander storyline. You have anything you want to start with on that?
I mean, I didn't really. It kind of starts off like relatively early with that. I mean, they attack the tower in the 5th episode, right? So they're kind of just in a battle for pretty much the entire.
Yeah.
I mean, I liked what they did.
I did enjoy the battle,
knocking the tower down, and
it was fun.
Also, the seeing all the Southlander villagers going in and trying to pledge their allegiance and just realizing the huge mistake they had made. The only one who really profited was Waldrig.
And he still, and Adar still made him cut his throat of that, cut the throat of that kid who's Theo's friend.
Yeah, well, R.I.P. to a sort of snivelly annoying one, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, he did suck.
Yeah, but I don't think that's like enough justification for somebody.
Oh no, I'm not saying he deserved to get killed. I'm just saying he did also suck.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean...
Yeah, can you be the one to deal out death as punishment, sir?
Fearing for my own safety? No. I mean, I am certainly not that wise, and even the wise cannot see all ends, so...
Yeah, well, in this case, I liked a lot of the battle scenes. It was more of that, what we talked about in the first episode of this, where the orcs just were really scary. Yeah,
they are. They're really there's something heavier about their presence than what we're used to in pretty much any other adaptation, but particularly the Jackson ones. Well, it seems like they're real easy to kill for the most part, unless they're Uruk-hai, should say.
Yeah,
but yeah.
But like, for instance, in the Jackson movies, that we see them raiding the villages. Dunlendings and the Uruks were raiding the villages in Rohan and stuff, but you don't really see it. You're just seeing this like
that it's happening,
montage of destruction.
Yeah, which is probably better for the tone of that film, but
they can't spend time on it. But you're not seeing how terrifying that would actually be. These
Yes, exactly. I mean,
monsters.
even in the Hobbit movies, in the first one, Fili and Kili are like messing with Bilbo, and Thorin's like, "Do you think a night raid by orcs is a joke?" But they still didn't. I feel like they're still no. I mean, the CGI in the Hobbit made it undercut the scariness also, this idea that like orcs are scary and now we're actually seeing it, it's like everybody's been saying how terrifying they are, but we haven't really seen it until this adaptation. So I think they just Rings of Power deserve some credit for that.
That is one of the things I think they actually, like, looking back, that's one of the things I liked most about the show. Actually, it made the stakes much higher. It made it feel more real and terrifying, and it did put you in their shoes a lot. For
I think I was gonna say, sorry, I think we mentioned before, I think you brought this up, like, when you see battles with orcs in the Peter Jackson movies, like, it's with the best fight. It's with Aragorn. It's with Legolas. It's with Gimli. Like some of the Éomer, like the best fighters in Middle Earth. So
it's just a bunch
so they're
of
just
people.
hacking through. Yeah. I mean, Helm's Deep, Gimli and Legolas. They have a game of it.
Yeah.
And now here you're seeing like normal people, like, oh yeah, you can easily get killed by an orc. They're a violent group.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
But I guess that violence I did want to mention at some point during the village siege, the fight with Arondir against that orc
the giant
captain
orc.
is so brutal. It's another
so much more intense than I would have expected from the show.
Yeah, kind of out of nowhere. I mean, he's getting like slammed into walls, and like he stabs him in the eye, and like his blood is like dripping onto his face. It's absolutely, it is so brutal, and like
it
is unlike
so
anything in the show, even.
Yeah, I mean, there's one other instance of like pretty brutal violence in the show, other than that particular scene. And that's when I'm thinking when Halbrand is fighting those the guild people in Numenor.
Yeah. That was pretty gritty.
We didn't mention this, but I wanted to point out like the part where there's blood splatter on the camera. That's normally something that I love to see because I'm a big horror fan. In this context, I hated it and I thought it was totally out of place.
Yeah.
I thought the brutality of that fight scene with the broken arm and the face getting smashed into the wall was actually a bit. I don't mind. And even enjoy fictionalized violence, but that scene just kind
feels wrong for the tone.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, agreed. Yeah, it was the wrong tone,
especially because it's. I mean, even if it is. Once again, spoilers. For the whole, I mean, at this point, if you don't realize there's going to be spoilers for the end of the show, you deserve it being spoiled. But
I mean, this is part 2 of our of our Rings of Chowder special
of this. Part 3, but the
part 3,
part of the end
part
of it,
2 of part 2.
Yes. So, but anyway, even if it's Sauron inflicting this violence upon people, it just still feels, especially because he looks just like a human, is just feels out of place. Like even the Arondir versus the orc, like it was brutal, but it's still like, I mean, this is an orc.
It was orc blood. It wasn't. Yeah, it was orc blood. It wasn't.
And they are brutal beings.
Yeah.
But like seeing that human versus human just felt strange for Tolkien's work. Like
like it's not that they shouldn't have had a fight scene there, but like it was just a bit graphic for. Yeah, it was just a bit graphic for what they're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. So anyway, back to the siege. I did about the orcs, and there was kind of around there. I liked the Nampot chant.
Yeah, I don't remember. Did you? I meant to look up what that meant.
Nampot is death.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, that works.
Yeah,
I liked that too. Yeah,
it was a little goofy, but it was also kind of like, I mean, if they're going to chant something,
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. I also, one of the things I did like as well, which is related to this, was I think it was the beginning of episode 6 when Adar does that seed planting ritual, and Arondir does the exact same thing.
Yeah, it does.
Like planting new life in defiance of death. I thought that was a really neat.
I don't think we knew what he was at that point, right?
Yeah. I mean,
when do we learn that he's the?
I think we find out for sure that that Adar is one of the early orcs. I don't think we find out until like the interrogation scene. It's not like confirmed until the interrogation scene with Galadriel in the barn.
Yeah, but it was interesting to see he still has those elvish traditions and everything.
Yeah, he still enjoys the light of the sun, which I thought was really interesting. But his children cannot, It's like it's a really Adar is a really cool character.
That
so much more compelling than I would have expected.
Yeah, that is an addition that I am like I'm fine with, because like it doesn't really break with the lore. It's sort of like a bit of a twist on it, and it like sort of cements an origin story, because Tolkien always bounced around between how the orcs were created.
Yeah, and the nature of the orcs,
Yes.
It's like, as the pure evil, it was not something that he was super comfortable with, like the idea that they could never, because I mean, yeah, we might have talked about this in a previous episode, but yeah, the idea that you could not be redeemed as a living thing that can't redeem itself, doesn't have the capability, is not something that would have worked with his Catholic worldview.
Yeah.
Or even, the view that's really, which is, slightly different, but like the worldview of the stories itself, it's like, it's tough. It's an awkward conversation.
Yeah, I think that's
which is why he never
really
settled on it.
Yeah. Well, while we're, I guess, this is jumping ahead a little and everything, but while we're talking about Adar and that sort of still having those elvish characteristics and loving the sun, I did want to talk about, so do you remember after the eruption of Orodruin and at the end of, I think, the 7th episode, Waldrig's saying like, "All hail King of the Southlands," yada yada, and then they have the like Southlands in the corner, and it like burns up and becomes Mordor.
Oh yeah, to Mordor, yeah.
I mean, it was weird. I kind of got chills from it, but it was also pretty goofy.
Yeah, I wrote that down in my didn't like column, but I didn't really hate it. It was just really corny.
Yeah,
the way it was done. It was almost like the timing was almost like if it was meant to be played comedically.
Yeah,
like there was nothing comic about it, but like the timing was almost comic. It was,
Yeah, so
like, not anymore. It's not, it's kind of the vibe that I got.
Yeah, so I wish I was saying while I was watching it. So Udun and I forget what Mordor means. What, Shadowlands?
Yeah, Darkland. I think is Shadowland, Darkland.
Udun means Shadow Pit or Hell, I believe.
Yeah.
So,
like Gandalf in Fellowship of the Ring calls the Balrog a flame of Udun.
Yeah. So basically,
flame of Udun.
Well, that was good. But so I would have liked to see him. So like, I feel like he would hate that place, because he loves the sun still, and he's just doing it for his children, effectively.
Yeah.
It would have been nice to see him say, basically, this is like a hellish, like, land of shadow, and it would have been nice to see him like, no, we're going to change the name of it to like Land of Shadow, because he would also kind of love and hate the place, it would have been nice to see it from his like point of view as a character saying, like it just would have been, I mean, it might not have been as like grand a reveal. Having like a character sort of name it as like a personal character thing, but it the way it played out, it just felt goofy. So I just thought of that at the time.
Yeah, I agree. It came off a little corny. Yeah. It's like, it wasn't bad. It was just like, okay, that's how you're gonna do that. Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, so back to the siege and stuff like that. I did want to say, Theo having to like be the one to like burn his mother's wounds.
Cauterize his mother's arrow wound.
Yeah, was like, okay, Aranda, you couldn't like do that. And
it's like, why can't Theo hold her down? And
I don't.
It's like she's not a big lady. It's not like it would take that much to like keep her still.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing was like pretty brutal.
It was.
It was definitely more realistic gore, I guess, than we're used to seeing. Yeah. Because, obviously there's plenty of orc blood spraying around and people getting killed all over the place and other adaptations, but not like somebody like bleeding their lifeblood onto the floor.
Right? Yeah, yeah. You don't see that kind of yeah. Yeah, you don't see that much blood of humans or elves, really, for that matter, in any other adaptation.
No, not particularly.
Yeah, it's kind of weird because like this show, for the most part, I would be like, oh, it's PG-13, except for like some of the violence is like it's even PG, a lot of it, except for some of the imagery, and then you have these like super violent and like very bloody parts.
Yeah, I mean, because Tolkien obviously he was against sort of like base works, so like cursing and sex and all that stuff was not really his MO.
Implied is the way he does anything remotely sexual.
Yeah.
Like like he says that orcs reproduce after the manner of the children of Iluvatar, which means sex. But he's never describing orc sex.
Yeah, fair enough.
God, by the way,
none of us want to think too much about that anyway.
No.
Yeah, so it was. You're right. It did feel like you could almost go to R with some of those fight scenes and stuff. But as always, violence is more accepted than sex or anything else in our media. So
yeah, it's usually the case, right?
Did you have anything else about the siege, or do you want to just kind of jump to the Numenorians?
I think that's it about the siege. I just think I really enjoyed the twist that the orcs and Adar used the Southlanders that came to them to join their side to get slaughtered first. I was like, yeah, well, what the kids say, fuck around and find out.
It feels on brand, and it made you feel for the ones who were, stayed, and not really the ones who abandoned them.
Yeah, I feel for them a little bit, only like they probably felt like they didn't have a better option, and that doesn't mean it's okay that you chose the side of objective evil, but it's like they were just trying to survive and they made a really dumb decision.
Yeah, basically, but it worked out.
Like that one orc's like they had to pay the toll.
Yeah,
like ooh. God damn! But yeah, all those villagers that stayed, and they're just realizing that they just killed their family.
Oh, we just killed all our friends. Cool.
Yeah.
Oops.
That's not how we wanted that to go.
All right, so let's jump back to the Numenorians up until the point where they come to the rescue. Then,
I love the scene in Numenor after Isildur gets himself kicked out of the Sea Guard. And he's talking to his father about like, oh, can you get me in on this expedition to Middle Earth? And he's like, why would I do that? You just threw away all of your opportunities. It's like he's such a good dad.
Yeah, you can tell he's a good dad and a good captain of Numenor as well. Yes, you can tell he's faithful through and through.
Yeah, definitely. And I loved the training scene with Galadriel just pretty much kicking everybody's ass.
Yes,
Isildur's friend does get a small cut on her arm.
Cuts her gets his promotion robe, like not even to her. But
yeah, I think she does get scratched. I think she does bleed just a little bit.
Yeah, but it did feel a little. You could feel the choreography.
Yes, it felt a little Pirates. It reminded me of the in the first Pirates of the Caribbean scene where Jack Sparrow and Orlando Bloom are sword fighting in the shop, and they're jumping up and around. And that's kind of what it felt like very choreographed. But it was very fun to watch. I love a good sword fight.
Yeah,
I even like a bad sword fight, honestly.
Yeah, and it was nice to see Galadriel enjoying herself again.
Yeah, it's like kicking ass and riding horses are the only things that makes her smile.
Makes her smile, yeah. I mean, generally, I did just love Elendil. I like Isildur too, but Elendil is just one of the most compelling characters to me. Which
Lloyd Owen just plays him so well. He's probably my favorite character on the show.
I think Elendil. So because other characters are enjoyable, like Elrond and Durin, and I like awesome. The hobbits and everything, but Elendil he's also, he's a man, so it's, in a way, it's kind of easier to identify with his, struggles and everything. But he just, the way he delivers a lot of those like emotional scenes and lines and everything is just.
Yeah, I know this would be jumping ahead, but him just like grieving his son who he thinks is dead. Who we know can't be dead because Isildur is kind of a big deal. So we know he's not dead yet. Everybody does, actually. But he doesn't. And you really believe that his heart is broken. I mean, he's a great actor. Holy crap.
And when, while we're up there, when Muriel decides that they're going to come back to Middle-earth and get revenge, basically, and he's just grieving for the entire island, he knows this isn't the right way. Is just all of his emotional scenes are very powerful. But anyway, back to the island. I did want to mention we don't see a lot of Farazan doing his thing.
we really don't. It's
I'm sure he'll come into play later.
Oh yeah, we know he will. The most we really see about him is that scene in the square, which
once again, weird themes.
But it was actually really I appreciate how shrewd he is being portrayed, because he would have been. I mean, it's like, he ends up being a huge dick.
That's his thing. Yeah.
But shrewd is like, he's definitely politically masterful. Obviously.
I like him as a villain. I don't like fantastic. Him, but and how brutal he is with his idiot son is just. Oh man, usually it's not nice to see somebody being mean to their kid, but sometimes when their kid's a little shit,
sucks. He does kind of suck. I don't like his haircut either. That's not really important, but I'm just throwing that out there. His haircut doesn't endear him to me at all.
But I mean, just the whole thing with talking about just exploit it. He's just like, here, you know what? Do you want me to lay out mercantilism for you? Because I will.
It's like, all right, kid, here's how imperialism works. We're going to go there, save them. They're grateful, and they're just going to pay us to exist for the rest of eternity.
And the kid still is like, I'm going to burn the ships.
We're going to make Numenor great again.
So I guess when we're leaving, I did want to mention it was nice, and it was just nice to see in general, but also it was nice to get the elvish recognition of their sort of majesty when Galadriel is embarking on the ship, and everybody just is like staring in awe of her.
Oh yeah,
because we don't really say elves are not very. They're not as respected and seen as mystical in the show in general. They seem more real than I think.
They
probably should.
It's like they're a lot more grounded, but they're not necessarily supposed to be grounded because they're elves. I
mean, they represent fairy and the mystical and unknown. So
right. So it makes sense on Numenor that they would be hostile towards Galadriel and everything, but it's seeing. I mean, that's one of the issues that most people have with the way Gil-galad's character has been written. It's like he's awful petty for.
he's pettier than Farazan.
It's a little strange. It's like that's not really. I don't know. It doesn't. Again, it's just not. It's not the version that we would expect to see, and obviously he'll have an arc. We know how important Gil-galad is, but it's a little confusing, if nothing else. You're like, wait, why is he doing that? Why is he behaving this way?
Well, all right. We'll get back to Gil-galad in a bit.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I mean, as far as the Numenorians go, it did feel a little bit Charge of the Rohirrim to see them like just kind of epically riding for like towards nothing. But I also wanted to mention, how do they know where to go?
Dude, that is exactly what I wrote down. I mean, granted,
I mean, they knew the general direction.
Yeah, but they didn't know. Like they were just like, yeah. How do they know which village was like gonna be? You know, it was confusing. Like it was like the Charge of the Rohirrim, but without that much emotion attached to it. Because you're like, is this even like? Does this make sense that they're showing up this quickly happens to be in the right place at the right time? Like it just didn't really.
I mean, I'm sure.
I don't know.
That part didn't bother me as much because we can kind of just assume that the timing worked out in a certain way where like they had already left and they basically arrived like as that started or something. It wasn't exactly laid out like that, but yeah, like I mean. I'm sure you could see smoke and stuff from the battle, but how far away? You know, they just know they're like, all right, they're in Mordor. Mordor's fucking huge.
Yeah, well, they're near. Okay, so they're near Orodruin. Like it's really close.
Oh yeah,
and they're sailing up the Anduin. Like they would have had to cross
through Ithilien.
They would have had to cross through Ithilien. It was sailed up
through the pass.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the amount of like the distance they would have to cover. Like it just didn't seem like they were at sea. And the next thing we see is that they're riding over the plains of what would become the plains of Gorgoroth. It was just odd.
But you know, I guess
it felt inorganic to me. Them showing up in the nicktime. Yeah. Like it's not that they shouldn't have. It's the way it was done felt inorganic.
I think it was
a little too like it wasn't the kind of catastrophe that we're used to in Tolkien because it wasn't unlooked for, but it was also not set up very well. You know,
I think it was an issue of like the edit where they wanted to. They keep cutting between the different storylines, and so they like I think the end of the previous episode they were at sea, right? Or they had just seen the shore or something. But like
well, Galadriel's like, I've been able to see the shore for an hour, you should see it in a few moments.
Yeah.
It's like so that like they're still far out at sea.
Yeah.
And then the next time we see them, they're all on horseback charging, you know?
Yeah, but it's only like the Southlanders have already been under siege and it's the next day, you know? So I think it would have made more sense. Like, but they're not just going to cut out the entire Numenorian storyline in those episodes just to show that they've been at sea they're not going to have them just be on a boat for like 2 episodes straight or whatever.
Yeah. There's no setup of them crossing across the land. Like again, they have to like the Mountains of Shadow I don't think they have that name at that point, the FL Duath, but like that's what they had. They would have had to cross those.
Yeah, I mean, there's a pass that I would presume doesn't have like Minas Honor.
Well, like the Black Gate wouldn't be there, so they could just go through. I guess. But
they would have gone. They would have gone through like Minas Honor, like to on the west side. They would have gone through like
Mordor, where Minas Morgul would be. Yeah.
Yeah.
But they'd still have to be. They're still crossing mountains.
Yes. Either way, it was. It was. Yeah. I noticed the same thing, but you know, you can give a little bit of suspension of disbelief.
I mean, it wasn't. You know, it's hardly the biggest issue that I had in the show. So.
Basically, you know, it was cool to see them fight and everything.
I mean, I'm always excited for a battle scene.
Watching them just mow those horses down like bikers with a chain.
Yeah, I loved that. I'm like, and that's a real thing that would have been used in war too, in that sort of style. It was pretty cool. The horses with the chains mowing down orcs.
But let's just. I mean, unless you have anything else you wanted to mention, do you want to just get to the barn scene with Adar?
Yes, please. I thought that was such an interesting scene because it really it's not how I would have expected the scene to go, and I mean that in a really good way.
Yeah.
I thought it was really interesting. Like Adar becomes fairly sympathetic. I mean, as sympathetic as he could be.
Yeah.
It's like you can at least like understand where he's coming from, and Galadriel comes off as just awful. You know?
Yeah. And so
Yeah.
when he says, like, look in the mirror for the
Yeah.
next Dark Lord or whatever, it's like, ooh, he
Like,
kind
ooh,
of has
burn.
a point.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, she's threatening. Is like, oh yeah, you don't want to talk? How about I bring all of your children out and slowly cook them to death in the sun?
Yeah. I mean,
Like,
it
God
is
damn,
brutal.
lady, holy shit! You're supposed to be like the good people. Fuck.
I also loved Adar mentioning the secret fire and that they
Yes.
all have it. It does.
Yes.
It makes you, remember that they are living creatures and that that Eru sort of allows them to live. But
yeah,
it's also, this whole time you are being sympathetic to the orcs, but it's kind of, you have to like remember that first of all, orcs are just evil by nature. And
yeah, I mean they're
they're a corruption too.
Yeah, they're corruption. Like we know that as a group, like maybe it's cultural. Like I think that's an interesting conversation to have. But whether it's by nature or cultural, like they enjoy inflicting pain on people.
I would think it's, especially if they're going with this explanation of, with the Adar as evidence.
Yeah.
I think it is by nature because
because
they are
a
corruption of elves, so it's sort of in their nature. But I mean, as you
whether
said
they're
before,
completely corrupted and they could never. I mean that's an interesting
redeemable.
philosophical in-world conversation to have that we just don't have time for.
But
maybe one day.
I will say another thing. Yeah. I forgot I said I was going to come up with a shorthand. But since we behind the scenes here, we are recording this episode the next day after the last one. I didn't have time, but I will have a shorthand.
Sean's moving. He's got to like install flooring and move out of another house. He's got a lot going on.
I have plenty of work on my plate already, besides giving myself homework assignments. But anyway, I did think it was interesting, and another sort of point in the column of sympathy for the orcs, of how much this group of orcs, at least, is like revolves around the idea of family.
Yeah. Adar is means father. If the folks watching didn't catch that, Adar means father in Elvish. And I think Arondir does ask, like, why do the orcs call you father?
Yeah,
because he is. It's an interesting, and he does see. It's so weird because he does seem to have genuine care for orcs.
Yeah, I mean,
like they really are his children. Like he really seems to feel that way about them.
Yeah, and that's why they become sort of sympathetic. I think because he's walking the walk as much as he talks the talk.
Yeah, he sure is. Yeah.
So, once again, throughout that scene and just in general, Adar is a really compelling character. And once again, I am bummed that the actor...
Joseph Malway. Yeah.
Yes, that they're replacing him. I don't know why. I don't know if we got more info on that, but...
Yeah, I don't know if he just didn't want to do anymore. I'm assuming it's a lot of time in the makeup chair for him.
Yeah, I mean, he seemed like he
did it so well.
When I don't know, he made some comment about it, and he seemed like, I don't know if it was his decision, but I guess we may never know.
Yeah. Either way, it's a bit of a shame, but I hope the actor they replace him with will do a good job.
One thing I wanted to mention that I didn't like was immediately after this fantastic barn interrogation scene was Galadriel and Halbrand sitting down and having this weird romantic tension.
Yeah, I still like. I've watched that scene because I watched that particular episode twice. Like first when it first came out, and then I watched it again, and so this was my third watch of that episode. And I still don't know what the hell they're trying to put across in that scene. Is it romantic? Weirdly, is it like
Is it like companionship, like friendship?
Yeah, I do not understand what they're trying to put across in that scene. Because it doesn't read. It's like what they're saying makes it seem romantic, but nothing feels at all romantic about it.
Yeah,
Especially it's very odd. Also, Galadriel wouldn't like elves fall in love once, basically.
Yeah, they're like monogamous by nature, and
they're like
we know
swans.
that she's married already.
Yeah. Well, do we know? We don't know that actually yet. We don't find out. No, because we find out that she thinks Celeborn is dead after Orodruin erupts, and she's hiding with Theo. That's when we find out that Celeborn's in the picture but she thinks he's dead.
Yeah, but like still, that death doesn't like stop them from monogamy, basically.
Well, right. That's what I mean. Like she thinks he's dead, but it doesn't matter because elves fall in love once. Yeah.
Yeah, they're not. Yeah.
Yeah, they mate for life.
Yes, like swans.
Yeah, except elves aren't as big a dicks as swans are.
Yes, swans are like.
I have a personal beef with swans. But,
okay, well,
I don't care that they're beautiful. They're
another
assholes.
time.
Yeah, I have a lot of therapy before I can talk about that on the podcast.
Okay, fair enough.
Anyway, what were we talking about?
Well, you were talking about how much Gil-galad is like a swan. Very swanish elf. No. Well,
I thought it was interesting, by the way, in that scene that precedes the interrogation, like the chase scene, that Galadriel is speaking to Arondir in Quenya. But then when she's chasing down Adar on the horse, she's speaking to her horse. She's saying Norolim, which is Sindarin. And I don't know if I'm sure that was intentional, but I'm not sure why that.
I wonder if the horse is a Sindarin horse. But then
maybe, yeah, who knows? Well, her horse has never.
No,
I don't know.
No, because
it's a Númenorian horse, though. It would have to be a Númenorian horse.
They speak Quenya, right?
Yeah.
Númenorians?
Yeah.
I think
like
it was...
Elendil is speaking Quenya to her earlier in the season.
I feel like it's probably just a callback, and they just kind of didn't...
Yeah,
they just ignored the language, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think they're just trying to recall the scene where in the Jackson Fellowship of the Ring when Arwen is saying Norolim to her horse as she's carrying Frodo across the fords.
Yeah, but then why does what's his face? Best elf of all time, Glorfindel Glorfindel, whatever it is.
Yeah. He also says Norolim in the book.
Yeah.
He says that to the horse as it carries Frodo.
Why is he speaking in All right, well, let's not get sidetracked.
I'll admit I'm a little confused as to the exact because sorry guys, but we're as we've said, we're not Tolkien scholars.
Yeah, we're nerds. We don't speak.
We're just nerds who like this. So I've always been a little confused as to the exact. I know, obviously, they're like. I think Quenya is the more ancient version, if I'm not mistaken. Of Elvish, but
Quenya is basically the language of the High Elves, and Sindar is the language of the
Middle Earth Elves.
Yeah,
basically.
Middle Earth, the ones who didn't go into the West at all, basically.
Right, sure, okay. Yeah, they've never seen the light of the trees or anything. Yeah, the light of Aman.
Insert shorthand here for we'll talk about that in another episode, but I think we'll talk about that when we talk about the nature of the different kinds of elves.
Yeah.
We'll get into the language as well.
Hell, that could be a 4-part episode on its own.
All right. So anyway, let's just skip forward to the eruption.
Yes.
I liked overall the sort of twist of them digging the tunnels to channel the water.
Yeah, it would have worked. Yeah. Yeah, a lot of people were complaining that like, oh, a bunch of water going into a volcano wouldn't make it erupt. It absolutely could do
Yeah,
that. It
because it
100%
would
could.
it could
The
like
amount of
cool the
steam and
top
pressure,
layer and
yeah, the
increase the
steam and
pressure
the
below.
pressure
Yeah,
would could easily result in an eruption. Because I heard those criticisms and I looked it up because I'm like, I don't know, that seems like it would make sense to me. And
the
yeah,
part
it is somewhat realistic as much
the
as
part to criticize would be the wall of pyroclastic
flow, yeah, the
flow or
pyroclastic
whatever
flow that
that
Galadriel just stands in and doesn't immediately turn into one of the
a
people of
pile of
Pompeii.
ash. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, she would have been frozen in time.
And just vaporized along with everybody
Yeah.
else there. But
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, ignoring that, it was
It's like whatever, it's fine.
it was an epic scene and an
It
awesome
was.
conclusion, and it's a really cool way of Mordor sort of coming into its own, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I will say, I mean, the first time I watched that episode, I was like, wow, what a great way to end. I'm actually really looking forward to seeing the next episode. You know, first time I watch it. Related to that comment, although I will say, I don't know why, but the first 4 episodes watching it, I had no problem. I just went right through. I found the second half of this season, even though it's when pretty much everything happens, it felt a bit of a chore to watch.
Yeah.
I don't know how you felt about it, but rewatching this, I was like, I'm not enjoying this that much.
It kind of there were, I think it's because there were a lot more parts I was sort of dreading looking for. Like, I mean, we'll get to the elves shortly, but
we'll be getting to that in a moment.
I was dreading most of that. Whereas, you know, like the things we already discussed, I kind of liked seeing the Numenorian part, especially Elendil and stuff. Again, I liked I sort of enjoyed most of the parts of it that weren't elf related. It was because I think the issue is there are characters that I could enjoy in basically every other sort of timeline, and that could kind of get me past the like lore issues and other like, you know, issues with the show and stuff. Like, you know, I enjoyed seeing Elendil. I enjoyed seeing, especially later on, I did want to mention how seeing Galadriel with Theo just puts her in a different light.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that part. Yeah, I enjoyed that a lot. Like, oh, someone's treating her with reverence, and because she is a badass in this. You know, this version of Galadriel is a badass. And,
she's a very noble and prestigious. It comes from a prestigious line of elves and everything. And she was just acting more, you know, less revenge driven and more like a wise, you know, ancient being.
Yeah, who's protecting this, young kid. Yeah, it's
so.
Yeah, I enjoyed their interaction. I liked when she like gives him her sword.
Yeah, very cool sword, by the way.
Pretty cool sword. Pretty cool sword. A lot of the elves swords, especially you see in the first episode, like they're gigantic, and I don't love the design of them. They just seemed a little bit clunky. However, Arondir's sword is super cool. I love the design of that half leaf shaped blade. It's like a scimitar, which is kind of, you know, probably not what Tolkien would have had in mind for elves. Like, you know, we know orcs use scimitars and stuff, but
basically everybody
I
just
that.
used
I thought it was really cool.
Like a straight like arming sword or long sword.
It would have been a double-sided blade, and
or
but I loved Arondir's sword. I thought that was such a cool design.
Yeah, and really also just skipping ahead briefly, I loved seeing Aeglos, Gil-galad's spear. It just, I don't know why I was just like, it was that.
Cool. Well, we know what it's gonna do. It's gonna skewer Sauron in season 5. So it's
cool to see it.
It was cool, meantime.
But
hey, there it is. It's gonna be a big deal.
Anyway, so it was hard. It was harder in some ways to watch this part, but there was enough for me to look forward to where I still enjoyed the rewatch. but there were definitely
Yeah,
especially the Elvin storyline, just a chore.
Yeah, I did a lot of pausing. I took a lot more breaks watching the second half of this first season. Yeah. I think the part of the reason for that is, and that goes to the pacing issues. Like they just they really, the second half of the season, they really crammed so much plot into,
they're shoveling it on.
into what felt like a very small amount of time.
Speaking of a small amount of time,
I was going to say, do we want to just get into the Mithril thing? Because,
well,
we're going to have to talk about it. Or is there something you wanted to hit on?
All right. Before we get there, let's just wrap up the Southlanders and stuff. So they, everybody's lost. Miriel gets blinded, which I don't remember if that's lore accurate. Is it? Does that happen?
I just don't remember. They might not have. I don't remember. I think it's more. I think if it's not in the Silmarillion or mentioned anywhere in the writings, I think it's gonna have to. It's a nod to the fact that her father is Tar Palantir, which Palantir, besides being the Seeing Stones, also means far seeing.
Yeah,
and so she is one of the faithful. We know. She's been hiding it up until like the end of this season, or been very cautious about how she's presented herself politically.
Mm-hmm.
But we know that she is one of the faithful. That last conversation that she has with Elendil on the ship before they arrive back in Numenor about how the price of the faithful is doing the thing and just hoping that it's gonna,
something.
The sacrifice and
by the way, Tar Palantir, 220 years old.
He really looks great.
I mean, for 220,
he looks phenomenal. It's like, I hope I look that good when I'm dead at the ripe old age of 220.
So they all go and meet up at the camp and everything. Have the emotional scenes with Elendil, and then Galadriel takes Halbrand with a sucking chest wound and rides. I did a rough guesstimation looking at a map, about 700 miles.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's got to be in the area of 1,000 miles from where they are in
all the way. Yeah, they're basically right in the entrance of Mordor, all the way up to Auragion, and he's like in the process of dying, and obviously not, because he's Sauron, he's going to be fine. But we don't know that, and she doesn't know that. She's like, he needs elf medicine. Let's just ride for 3 days straight.
Yeah, I know. Well, it's not like she's riding with him on the horse as well. Even
Pippin style,
he is riding full gallop 700 miles to get to Region.
Just sort of absurd, but
it was a little hard to believe.
Yeah. So now that we've arrived in Region, let's I
have one more thing about I have one more thing I wanted to say. Just comment on, because it was a very powerful moment to me. It really hit me when the Númenóreans are loading up the ship, and Elendil is trying to get Beric, Isildur's horse, onto the ship, and he just won't go. And he's just begging him. Oh my God, that wrecked me. That was so emotional.
Yeah, just that.
Yeah, that was a very powerful scene. Again, Lloyd Owen is just killing it. He's so good.
Absolutely.
He's playing Elendil perfectly, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, he's playing that
just how I'd like to see him. Powerful, but emotional.
Yeah, emotional and loving, and
he has faithful. that sort of Aragorn-like masculinity that is nice to see.
Yeah, masculine and nothing toxic about it. Yeah,
yes,
it's just like
and the way he is with Miriel and everything. So
anyway, I just wanted to mention that, because that scene really hit me very hard.
Worth mentioning. just everything about the ending of that season with him is. Sorry,
really
one more
powerful,
thing that I forgot again.
Yeah,
They did, and I think we mentioned this last time. They said they were going to go to the Southlanders said they were going to go to
Pelargir.
Oh, Pelargir, yes,
Yeah.
which is a Gondorian city. It's basically south of Minas
It's near
Tirith.
it's
along
near
the
or where
Anduin.
Minas Tirith would be. It's like right above the delta of the Anduin before it goes into the Bay
Into
of
the sea.
Balfalas, and
So it's weird that they.
so they point out that there are Numenorian colonies that Numenor has been to Middle Earth for, because I don't remember them actually mentioning that earlier in the show. They made it seem as though they had never been to Middle Earth before.
Yeah, that was just a weird. It was kind of the same as like Galadriel and Celeborn and stuff to me, where it felt like
we should mention this
to kind of keep that information until the end.
Yeah, they held it back, which was
just
I mean, the fact that Numenor has had colonies in Middle Earth seems like something that should have been mentioned before.
Yeah, for sure.
Just like the fact that Galadriel is married and all that other stuff.
There's a few things like that where it's like, so you're just revealing this towards the end of the season when there's already a lot going on, and there just doesn't seem like a point to not revealing it earlier. Like,
there could have been a throwaway line earlier that just establishes that it.
I mean,
it was kind of a throwaway line in the context in which they used it. So, couldn't you have just said it earlier? It would have made a little more sense. And then the Numenorians could have told the Southlanders, like, "Oh, you should go here." Like that would have made more sense to me.
Yeah,
and not a big problem, but it was a little awkward. Yeah.
And in the case of Galadriel, like it seems like it would almost add into her motivation for revenge and everything if she thinks her husband is dead. I guess we don't know why, but it seems like they're basically just teeing up another mystery for the next season, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, and also shouldn't their daughter have been born by now?
I believe so,
since she marries Elrond, it's like kind of a big thing.
Once again, we
becomes very important.
Can't base information on like timeline stuff because it's just not.
I know it's compressed, but like the idea that Elrond is how many thousands of years older than his wife doesn't. I mean, I don't know. It just didn't. It just I don't know.
I mean, that sort of thing doesn't matter to elves. Once you reach like 200, I feel like
it's much true, difference. You're as an adult as any other elf. Yeah.
Well, I mean, Halbrand was hitting on Galadriel, and he's
true.
He's been around since the beginning of time.
Yeah, that's true.
All right.
All right. Yeah, let's jump into it. Let's jump into the elves, Mithril,
because we're gonna have to talk about Sauron. It might take a minute. So, where do we start? Oh, so
do we start with the Mithril myth? The myth reel.
So let's just start with, I think let's see. So it starts with Durin taking the table early on. And I did want to mention something on the elf side of that scene. It's a little weird that the only she-elf we even see or hear anything about there is Galadriel, because there's just a bunch of like elven women, like elf maidens or whatever. Though. Yeah, that are all there's some sitting at the table and they just have these pearl coifs.
Oh yeah, like covering their faces and everything.
Yeah, and it was just kind of like, all right, so I guess we don't need to know who these elven characters are.
Yeah,
but so then I just wanted to start there because this all happens within like 5 minutes where Durin takes the table, and that's great, especially because it feels more satisfying that he pulled one over on them.
Yeah, he was full of shit about that stone being like extremely. He's like, nah, my wife wanted a new one.
Immediately afterwards, it's followed by, and here I'm just going to get through all of this, and then we can talk about it. It's followed by half-elf bullying of Pedithel. Then seeing first, side note, they we see that they're sticking with the Jackson Balrog design based on the in the Mithril origin story, which is just pretty much entirely fabricated.
It's everything about it is wrong.
And then immediately after that, we're told that the elves have a very precise ticking clock on
they have
how
6
long they're
weeks.
going to live.
It's by the end of spring. Like, why? Anyway, okay, so let's get into why that doesn't jive.
we discussed before, we didn't want to like just sit here and harp on this for a while. Just know that we're upset about it, and we're going to tell you the lore behind why this is like inaccurate, and then we're just going to move on. Otherwise we'll just be here complaining for a while.
So the myth that is presented, and look, they do say in the show, like, it is said like that this is a myth, that this is like a legend. It's not factual necessarily, but still.
We also see later on that the mithril next to the leaf does heal the corruption, and so that kind of confirms. And I had kind of forgotten about that.
Yeah, me too. Until we rewatched it, and you see.
We were hoping they would like backpedal on that a little, but they kind of can't.
They can't completely. I mean, maybe there's a clever way that they're gonna pull back on that whole thing of mithril curing rot and evil.
Yeah, but I mean, it does.
So this idea that a great elf warrior and a Balrog would fight, and the goodness of the elf and the evil of the Balrog would somehow. First of all, why is there a Silmaril? Well, the lost Silmaril inside of a tree is nonsense as far as the lore is concerned.
The one that they're probably talking about is the one that was lost deep in the like cracks of the earth, basically.
Right. Yeah.
And so it wouldn't have been in a tree.
No, it would not have been. No, it would not have been, especially since it started as a tree anyway.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't go back into a tree. And so, the idea that this good and this evil fighting each other is completely incompatible with Tolkien's writings.
Yeah, it combining to create something better.
Dualism does not work in Tolkien. It just doesn't. Like,
it's evil good versus evil.
It's evil is not a thing in and of itself. It is a lack of goodness. So the idea that evil and good balance out to create mithril just doesn't jive with anything that anybody has ever read. By J.R.R. Tolkien in the Legendarium. It just doesn't.
He has a lot about combining forces and being stronger together, and that works for good and evil, but not together. Ever.
Yeah, it's just it does not. Yeah, it just doesn't jive. Dualism really it does not have much of a place.
Also,
dualism again, it requires like evil to be its own thing, and that's
its own
not
entity.
How it is. Yeah, that's just not what that is.
So also, mithril is. It's just an ore in the earth. There isn't like magic about
metal.
it. It's a very precious metal that is just stronger than steel and lighter and it's magical in its properties, but it's not of magical origin. He doesn't exactly say, but it's not.
It's just a precious metal. I mean, really,
this is really totally fabricated, and it was abundant on Numenor.
Yeah.
I think it's probably in other places, but we know it's abundant in Numenor and abundant in Moria. Or Khazad-dûm, yes, at the time. And so it being only there and created by this weird like anti-lore thing is just ridiculous, basically. Yeah,
it's counter to everything that we read. Yeah, it's just It's not great. Again, we don't want to spend the whole too much time on this.
So to follow that, the ticking clock of the elves. So the idea that the elves are fading from the earth isn't ridiculous in itself, because they feel this calling to leave Middle Earth that's not even really for until the next age, I guess, in general.
Yeah.
But
right, yeah.
The
whole thing with the elves is that their fate is tied to Arda. That means the Earth. They're not going anywhere until, I mean, granted, like, so they're like, oh, we have to go back to Valinor, but like that's not the idea that they would fade in Middle Earth and they have to go back to Valinor
in 6 weeks.
Yeah, in 6 weeks.
The most ridiculous part of it, but
yeah.
And so
the end of spring, it's like, hey, why?
Jumping ahead, the Elven rings do preserve life, and that's one of the virtues of them. Yeah, it helps that it does, like, that is the reason that they're sort of able to stay as long as they do by creating these sort of kingdoms out of time. But I mean, there's no mention at all of them being up against a time crunch and like having to leave before then. And even if they did, they could have, I would have been okay with them sort of starting to imply that and working that in. But just the fact that it's going to happen in 6 weeks. And also, what about all the Sylvan elves and all the people who hadn't seen the light at all? Should they just be dead because they don't have any light? Like, it's
well,
just...
even in the Third Age, when the elves really do overall just start to fade, and they all, most of them do take a ship and go back to the Undying Lands, to Valinor. Like, it's not because they have to; they don't have a choice.
They just feel that their time is coming.
Yeah, but time is up. Like, now is the time of men, of humans. Yeah,
they're kind of the elves' whole point in Tolkien is to ennoble men, basically, towards the end of their time, and basically hand the reins of the world over to men after they ennoble them by bloodline. With Beren and Luthien, Arwen and Aragorn, and all that, and with their teachings and actions and everything. But just this whole idea of having a ticking time clock, needing to encase every elf in the light of the Silmaril using Mithril. It's just all of it from top to bottom is pretty much entirely ridiculous.
Yeah,
and against the lore.
Yeah. And again, like, they'd have to be very clever to write their way out of it. It's just, it's just a lot. It's a lot that they have,
which is what
fix.
It's something that might not end up bothering somebody who doesn't know the lore, and that's why it's been kind of hard for. It's really hard to like just completely take that out of your head watching it, because it's
it's difficult to watch it without like factoring in all the information that we have. It's like, we know all this stuff from the writings, and so when it's something that's so like flagrantly against what's been written, it's really baffling and confusing, and that's why there's such a strong negative reaction to that aspect in particular. So
I did also say, like, and this is sort of while rewatching it before remembering that the Mithril did heal the leaf. It was kind of like, knowing that, it was kind of a speculation of like, do the elves need like mithril batteries to recharge, or is Gil-galad lying, or did Sauron lie to them?
Well, that's the thing. Except for like the mithril, seemingly, maybe it was a coincidence. Who knows that leaf? But
probably
again,
not.
I was gonna say, it's that would have to be that would be hard, almost as hard to swallow as the changes from the lore. That's not what we saw. I'm hoping that somehow Sauron's just had his influence, and that's why they believe these things that we just weren't aware of before. Because I mean, he's a shapeshifter. He could, we know that he's turned into a vampire and flown away from things.
Yeah.
So like, he could get around, if he to do these things. But it's a lot. He would have been, we haven't seen it, and he would have been out of breath, I think, in every scene with Galadriel. Like, hey Galadriel, what's up? Where have I been?
Sorry,
don't worry about that. I was in the forge. I was forging some swords.
I just had to fly.
I just needed a second. I was making a lot of swords. I was definitely not flying around Middle Earth, corrupting things.
Well, I guess that there isn't really much else with the elves to talk about up until the Celebrimbor and the forging of the rings.
Yeah,
but I mean, I liked that whole sequence. It made it it did make it sort of credible how Halbrand could have helped them, like Anatar could have helped them.
Yeah.
And one thing, I guess, before, because I mean, I think we can just start talking about Sauron in a sec, but one line I did love was 1 will corrupt, 2 will divide, but with 3 there is balance.
I liked that as well. Yeah. That felt
it felt on brand.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, which was a relief for how much not on brand things that there were
in that storyline.
I liked that as well. I liked it as well.
Yeah, everything with the forging and with Elrond and all of them, like him suspecting them at the end. I mean, everything all just happened in the last episode, basically.
Yeah. It's one of the things too that there are a few things in that I had a bit of an issue with, like the idea that they need pure silver and pure gold from Valinor. Like, what's different about that stuff?
Yeah, I mean, also mixed with Valinorian steel because they just kind of smelted the whole thing without breaking it apart.
I know, that was one of the things that I am like, I know this is not a big deal. It's a little nitpicky, I guess, but the idea that steel would melt at the same temperature as gold and silver was...
And that they would somehow separate it all at the end. Yeah.
And they separated out. Yeah. It's like, what the hell? Do these people know how to do this? You can find out on YouTube how to smelt properly.
Could it just kind of I mean, it wouldn't be as emotional, I guess, if they tore it apart beforehand and then
smashing it with a hammer. Yeah. It's like Celebrimbor picks up Feanor's hammer and just starts smashing Galadriel's.
It's like, it wouldn't be quite as.
She wouldn't have taken that very well. She'd be like, dude.
It wouldn't be quite as.
That's my brothers. Could
composed
you show some respect?
But I did like the
the actual
rings.
pouring the metal into the mold and everything was kind of neat. How did you feel, by the way, about the design of Nenya, Galadriel's ring, the white ring?
The white ring?
Because it was like a teardrop shape. It wasn't a ring, and they were making such a big deal about it being a circle. And then they made one of the rings not a circle.
Oh, I guess I didn't even notice that it was a teardrop shape.
Yeah, it's like a teardrop. It's not a regular.
It shouldn't have a corner
kind of ring.
All the magic power is going to shoot out of the corner.
Yeah, so that I found weird. It was like,
I mean, they were pretty.
They're beautiful. I don't hate the design of the rings exactly, but they made such a thing about it being a circle, and so that the power circles in on it. So, I mean, which would be fine, I guess. It's just I don't know.
It'd be nice.
It looked like regular ring making, though. It didn't seem like ring of power making exactly.
I think
it was cool looking, but I don't.
It didn't feel like they were just.
What about this as a ring of power? It looks like just you're making regular rings. I guess in this version of the story, Mithril is magic in and of itself. So
also, I don't think the elves make things in a magical way. They just do it really well, and it just sort of imbues it naturally. Yeah,
maybe the stones that Celebrimbor had picked out were part of that too. I'm not sure.
Yeah. I hope that we get to see Círdan, the shipwright.
I think we're supposed to see him in the second season.
Ah, okay. That's
I think he was casted. Him. I'm not sure. I'm not certain on that, but I think I read something about that.
He's one of the oldest elves. He's got a beard.
The only elf, as far as we know, with a beard because he's so old.
And he gets Narya.
Narya, yeah.
I'm gonna have to just keep studying these the ring names because I'm gonna keep forgetting which one's which.
Yeah,
Vilya?
so Vilya is the blue stone ring, yeah.
And that ends up being Elrond.
It goes to Gil-galad, but it eventually goes to Elrond. Yeah,
Yeah.
Gil-galad falls.
And then apparently Galadriel earns herself.
Yeah, I think she gets that ring from the beginning, right?
Yeah.
Which, based on her like standing in court, seems like doesn't really jive. You know.
Well, anyway, let's wrap things up with the Halbrand Sauron story, which is probably one of the biggest twists, and sort of a little bit different from the lore and how it should have gone. But
so I said this yesterday or the last episode that, you know, knowing the lore, when as soon as Halbrand says call it a gift, when he somehow schools Celebrimbor and combining metals, like he doesn't really know about that. That was the dead giveaway. It's like, oh, okay, he's Sauron, because in the writings, Sauron tricks Celebrimbor and on the other elves by presenting himself as Anatar, Lord of Gifts. Which is why call it a gift was a dead giveaway for people who already knew. Yeah,
confirmed.
Like, all right, yep, there it is. Okay.
Because I think first time around we were kind of suspecting him, but it was almost like, all right, this seems like almost too obvious, but it's also not accurate to the lore. So
well, again, it's like they really had to go out of their way to create mystery with Halbrand. Again, it's like they never explain like. How was he shipwrecked? How did he happen to meet up with Galadriel in the ocean? You know, it was like a lot of chance that not even Sauron could.
Create for himself.
Yeah, it's like that situation. Like, I don't think, like, how could he create that situation? I just don't buy it.
It was still more, yet again, playing off of our expectations and our knowledge of the lore, which I just don't like in general.
It's like, you know, you don't need to have a mystery in it. You know, the story is already compelling, and you're kind of distracting from it by spending so much time trying to create mystery. And it wasn't even that effective, to be honest.
Like it almost felt too obvious, but it was like the reason it was like, all right, it could be somebody else because it was wrong. Like, that was the reason that where it's like, all right, well, this guy wants to go to Numenor and, you know, he's a smith and all that. So it seems like it could be him, but it's like, well, you know, like he doesn't go to Numenor yet. And he doesn't, you know, he takes the form of an elf, and that is, I mean, you know, I can see him having a different name or whatever, but it's like, you know, it's playing off our expectations, and I didn't like that. But I mean, I did like how... I
understand why they would do that, but I don't think it was a good idea.
I liked how he played him, and it was a little interesting to watch again through and see like his decisions from the beginning through that context of like wanting to stay on Numenor and just, you know, various actions he takes and like the things he says early on of like how to manipulate people and things like that. Also, like that he did end up becoming king of the Southlands.
That was pretty. It was kind of funny. Rewatching it, going, it's like, and you know, just like some of the smiles that he gives, like take on new meaning when you're like, there it is. It's like, that's actually was a hint. We just didn't know it.
I mean, like we could pick up some of the hints, but it's, you know, once again, why were you going to suspect him, really?
Again, they went out of their way to make it seem like it couldn't possibly be him, to the point where it's like, well, that doesn't really make sense that it is him because you guys went really out of your way.
I did want to mention one thing that we don't really know is why Sauron hates Adar. I get why the reverse is true.
Right, yeah. Well, I mean, he hates him because he stabbed him and betrayed him, I guess, but...
Yeah, but he also, Adar mentions, like, killing a woman he loves or something. Like, I don't know if that's actually a thing.
I think that was just because Adar didn't know that Halbrand was Sauron, and he was just, like, trying to get under his skin of this, what he assumed was a human man.
Yeah.
It's like, why else? It's like, I've killed a lot of people. It's like, did I kill a woman or a child?
Yeah. I mean...
Sauron's like, no, you killed me, you bitch. You stabbed me, you son of a bitch.
Yeah, and Adar hates him because he was just trading his orcs like
experimenting on
expendable
his
slaves and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, overall, I mean, I liked the way that you're gonna obviously know the actor's name, where I'm gonna forget it. But I like the way he was played. I think overall,
Halbrand, Sauron.
Yes, Halbrand.
Oh yeah, Charlie Vickers.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, I agree. I have no problem with the performance. I think he did a great performance. I think it didn't make some of how they ended up doing this. Again, to me, it doesn't really make much sense. But yeah, most of the things that don't really make sense, it's like it was in the effort to try to make this big mystery.
Yeah, once again, it was just that, like,
it felt like a misstep.
Yeah, I do want to mention their like mind battle thing that they had. I thought it was pretty cool. I like the discussion they were having, and it also
he's in her head.
It also showed his capacity as the deceiver, because he was convincing you as like the watcher, or me as the watcher at least.
Yeah. Oh, that it really like could have been Finrod and.
Well, no, that like
how do you mean?
that
just in general,
like to see his side of things.
Okay,
like, he was very.
The idea that he wants to heal Middle Earth. I'm trying to make up for the bad things that I've done by putting myself in charge of everybody and everything.
And seeing their reflection in the water was just very awesome.
That was cool. It was cool. It
was almost like, I almost want to see that, But I mean, he was just doing it, and that I liked that once they revealed him and everything, he really felt true to like the Sauron character of being like this sort of conniving and convincing snake, basically. But you see those moments of like rage and evil poke through.
Yeah, I love what they did with his eyes during that when they're when he's kind of in her head on the raft.
They're almost like burning through.
Yeah, I was like, oh man, that's intense. it was cool.
Yeah. Overall, now that mystery is out of the way, I'm kind of excited to see his storyline. I was excited to see like his corruption of Numenor and everything.
Yeah, that's going to be fun.
So I hope with most of these like mysteries and setups and stuff out of the way, that we can just get more cleanly into the stories as they were written. But we'll have to see.
Yeah, well, that's one of the things. Like this kind of adaptation requires a lot of fill in the blank, which is why it's so confusing that things they didn't need to change, they changed just for the sake of the mystery box. And I'm like, that's not what's compelling about this. To me, that's not. That's just kind of a thing. That's like, it should be a little. It just felt ham-fisted. It's like, let's create a lot of mystery here.
Yeah, because like I was saying multiple times now, I think you could have appealed to both sections of the audience with just following the story itself more closely, where we know what's going to happen, but we just want to see it. I don't want to be
I'm looking forward to seeing how it happens,
like made to look like an idiot almost at every section, just because I can't guess how you fucked up the lore, basically.
Right? Right. It's like, we can't. They made it so that you can't guess because they're just totally going off the plot. Really, I mean, literally going off the plot,
off the reservation, certainly. People who don't know the lore would have just
enjoyed the ride.
They would have had mysteries because they don't know that Anatar is Sauron.
Yeah,
we would,
exactly.
but it's like,
yeah,
we could all just
it's
be
like, well, what about
"Mhm."
spoilers? I'm like, no, Game of Thrones didn't worry about spoilers. The books were already written.
Yeah,
You
they
know,
were out for,
ironically, their last season that wasn't written in books yet stunk.
yeah.
So,
Yeah, so it's,
I'm
if
hoping they just got the worst season out of the way. I hope this is the
yeah.
worst the show is.
Yeah,
Because
it's
that
not
said,
even
I'm
that
not saying it's
bad.
total crap, but like I hope this is the worst of the show.
And it
I hope it's
only
all
goes
uphill
up
from here.
Well,
Yeah,
it's to
that's
me,
the
it's
hope.
like, why would you adapt somebody's writings that are so universally, beloved by the people
Yeah,
who are into them and everything, if you're just gonna like kind of ignore them and just kind
yeah,
of do your own thing,
yeah. It's
like
like
just
then
use the writing, it's right there.
yeah, it is. It's right there. Yeah, I agree. That's the main frustration I had as a viewer for sure.
Yeah,
This whole
but
like I'm like, why are they changing things they didn't need to change? This is what we wanted to see.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, I mean, overall, I'm excited for the next season and hopefully
Yeah, I am
for
too.
more seasons to come.
Yeah, agreed.
All right, we can start to wrap up, and you can do your little fun fact that you brought for us. But
Yeah.
I did want to mention.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so next episode we wanted to talk about video games and Tolkien.
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
The Gollum game just came out, and
Yep.
after
And no one's happy about it.
they issued like 2 or 3 apologies for this video game. We're like, you know what? This seems like our brand. Having to issue that many apologies. So I figured it would be perfect to sort of kickstart a conversation about that.
Yeah.
But,
and in preparation, as somebody who's not historically been much of a gamer, it's my understanding that I can actually download, because I have my girlfriend bought us an Xbox a few months ago. It's like the S, I guess.
Oh, yeah.
But either way, I'm given to understand that Shadow of Mordor and Shadow of War are still available on those, so I might get those just for a little bit of research.
Just the way you're talking about this is pretty adorable, Zerb, I have to say.
I know, I'm just like
somebody who plays a lot of video games.
I know, I'm like, so I have a certain kind of Xbox that I think I can still get this game.
I can download these games even though they're a few years old.
I know, it's like, how old am I? Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
I'm 75 years old, by the way, for the people who don't know.
Certainly
very old man.
In spirit, yeah. You're a Numenorian, 75. But yeah, we'll be back with that. But in the meantime, do you want to give us a little bit of that juice?
Oh yeah. So, I guess we got to wrap up with Tolkien fun fact, right? And it's my turn.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, in that case, today's Tolkien fun fact. Yeah. I'm gonna edit all these pauses out. I'm gonna make it sound like I know what I'm talking about.
Oh, I'm sure. You should definitely just leave all that in, but
I might shorten the pause for the sake of listening to it, but oh Christ. I have nothing. I'm so sorry. I had something earlier and I forgot what I was gonna say.
All right. Think of
something and say it.
think of topics of I don't know, transportation. Think of transportation.
Oh yeah. Well, Tolkien rode a unicycle everywhere he went, so.
Oh God,
that's how he got around. Yeah, I know. Isn't that disappointing? He's like one of those nerds on campus at your college that thinks they're cool by riding a unicycle.
Yeah, man, yeah, that is disappointing,
isn't it? Yeah,
I heard he even rode it to war.
Yeah, he was going up and down the trenches. Oh yeah, the famous unicycle cavalry of World War One. Yeah,
juggling hand grenades and riding a unicycle through the trenches.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, let's continue to make light of this horrific war.
Jesus, yeah, I know. It's like in the Battle of the Somme, one of the most bloody, violent, lethal battles in the history of human warfare.
And there he was, riding his unicycle. Wow, really paints him in a different light. Thanks for bringing that to us, sir.
Well, they brought the unicycle into World War I to maybe cross no man's land because, it's just small. At the smaller surface area, you're less likely to hit mines and such. So that was the tactical reason.
Yeah, and also, the Germans would look at that and just be maybe so shocked that he wouldn't, nobody would shoot at you. But
Gott in Himmel, what is he doing?
Yeah, I thought
this man is crazy.
I can't even tell. It's only as one wheel. It's like a penny farthing.
We're very sorry if any Germans end up listening to this.
If we didn't insult people based on Token riding a unicycle to war, we've definitely just insulted the Germans. So
we insulted Tolkien, the English army, and the German people.
Well, my slate's clean after
because they weren't fascist at that point, so I don't feel like they really deserve to be made fun of that bad. Because everyone was really at fault in World War One.
That's why
tensions were high, and then they just all started beating the shit out of each other.
That one's a little more forgivable, I guess. Anyway, let's not go into a war tangent.
Anyway, if anybody wants to correct our history, our lore, please send us an email at Lord of the Wrongs Podcast. Oh yeah. You can do so by sending an email to lordofthewrongspodcast@gmail.com.
All right,
and I guess we're done.
please, we're done with our obligatory Rings of Chowder special.
Part 2 of the second part of Rings of Chowder.
I hope you enjoyed the cream of our soup.
Yes.
And with that, we say Namarie.
Yeah, good Namarie, friends. Listen next time.